Hello again. Today is another photography related video. As you can probably see by the title, I'm redoing an idea that I had last year, basically to re-edit some of my old photos, except this time it's the ones that I've taken during my time at uni. I picked 6 different photos to edit today. 4 of those are ones that I've done before, and then also 2 of them are ones that I haven't done before, but I kind of looked over as bad photos, and while I was going through the photos to pick which ones to edit, I looked at them and I thought they have potential, so I've edited them today. Let's jump straight into number 1, which is this photo here. It's a photo of the train bridge going over Penryn near the woodland where I was living this year. The photo originally in its raw form is quite underexposed because it was getting to a late time in the evening, and in my first edit I definitely upped the shadows and the exposure to make it seem like it was more of a daytime photo, but I also put a preset on it and it gave it a really stormy look, which I really liked. And I still like it, but when it comes to editing it this time, I want to make it more natural, because I said in my last video last year that I wanted to avoid presets, and for the most part I have in this last 10 months it's been, I believe. I'm going to simply use my editing skills to try and replicate that kind of stormy look while also keeping it natural kind of editing. In the editing process of this photo, I reduced the highlights, lifted the shadows, and I also reduced the noise in the sort of dark areas in the photos around the hedges and the trees. I then took it into Photoshop and used the content aware tool to remove the woman from the front. I had a lot of difficulty with this because content aware isn't always perfect, and I wanted a straight line to match up the little grass hill there, and I had to do that manually with the clone tool. I then messed around with the clarity and the contrast to recreate the stormy look, as I said, and I especially did it in the sky to make it dramatic. And then I also added somewhere in there a teeny tiny little bit of warmth to the photo because it was more on the cooler side, because there's a lot of blue in there. I do really like both versions of this photo, to be honest, because I really like it with the preset and without it. I think it works either way. Obviously, when you're a nature photographer, you generally want to avoid presets, so if I'm looking at it from that stance, I definitely prefer it without, because it's more of like a realistic scene. But in terms of a artist type perception, I think it works really well with the preset because it's a more dramatic look and it looks more like a piece of art rather than just a documentary sort of photograph. This next photo that I took was taken back in early January, I believe, this year. This is a photo that I've taken in the last 3 months that I'm probably the most proud of. I did a long exposure of the cars going down a road, and I think it looks so cool because it was about 7 p.m. at that point, maybe 8 p.m, and back then obviously it was an early setting sun. In the first edit of this photo, again, I used a preset, and I really love the way the preset made it look from, again, an artist sort of perspective. It looks dramatic and stormy, and it works really well because the colours really pop, and it creates a contrast between the really like sort of saturated blue of the sky and then this really nice orange that the lights produce. But because I said I was going to avoid presets, I again avoided them this time. When it came to editing, I did it the natural way, as I'm calling it. I adjusted the crop, I messed with the clarity, shadows and highlights in this photo. I added some warmth to the lights in the photo to recreate that warm versus cool tones in the preset version of the photo. I upped the vibrance ever so slightly, and then I also added a vignette afterwards. And this was the final result. If I'm being honest here, obviously this isn't really a nature-based photo, so I kind of, whenever I look at it, I always look at it in an artistic way, because that's what it was originally. I've done a long exposure to show those lights going on the road, and really that's the only way I can put it, is that it's meant to be an artistic photo. So although I do like the way I've edited it in this second edit, I definitely do prefer it with the preset. Image number 3 takes us back to probably about October time, when we found a stick bug in our garden. When it came to editing this photo, not much really changed. The only sort of thing I really had difficulty with was the highlights, because it was a sunny day and I was sort of rushing to get this photo. I didn't want the stick bug to disappear, even though they move really slowly, so I don't know what I was panicking about. So when it came to editing the photo, I made sure to focus on that specifically. I needed to reduce the highlights and then also lift the shadows because it was looking a bit dark. I also, in the edit, cropped the image significantly more than the original, and I also selectively upped the clarity on the stick bug's face to put the emphasis on that. This was a really simple edit because it was a good image anyway. I just really wanted to focus on those specific areas, reducing the highlights in the background to not distract from the face, and then also make sure that the face pops out with the clarity, and also lifting the shadows so that it's not lost in the image. For the fourth image, it's one taken at Pendennis Point in Falmouth. It's not my strongest photo ever, but I really like the path which goes down towards the sea. In the edit, it's really simple, not much has changed at all. I think when I re-edit it, I really need to lighten it up again. So I cropped the image better in the edit. I also reduced the highlights and increased the shadows. I upped the exposure on the grassy area and also made it more of a warm tone. And then I also increased the exposure a little bit on the sky. I upped the clarity as well, just to bring out the clouds a little bit. I think generally I do prefer the second edit that I've just done. I think it's just generally better, it's brighter and it's better cropped. Now we are moving on to the last two photos, which are ones that I haven't edited yet, but I did want to include them because I really do like them. Both photos were taken at Kennel Vale on a trip with 3 other classmates. They were lovely, I really enjoyed meeting with them, and we also got some amazing shots at Kennel Vale. Kennel Vale is actually a place I will be visiting in the future and hopefully doing a video on, because it's a really cool place with an amazing history. This first photo at Kennel Vale is of an old building there, and I got a wide angle shot from the outside of the building. Generally when I first looked at this, I didn't really like it because it was really highlighted with the sun coming from this direction in the photo and really showing up on the wall, which is right here. So when it came to editing this photo, I definitely reduced the highlights first, as well as moving down the exposure. I found in the photo that because the sun was obviously heading through the trees, there was this like kind of dark corner down here which really needed to be brightened up. So I used a gradient tool from the left side to up the shadows, and then from the right side this way I reduced the highlights and exposure. At the very end of the photo editing, I added some warmth. You'll also notice in the clip of me editing it, I also sort of reduced the saturation of the purples and the magentas in the photo. This is because it had something called fringing, which is where you get these odd colours, usually purple and green, around branches most of the time when you do nature photography because it's against a bright sky. It's simply just sort of colour distortion. And it's really easy to remove when you know how to do it in Lightroom. You can do it with the HSL tool, I believe it's called, and just reduce that saturation. And for the final step of the photo, I added a vignette, and I think it looks absolutely brilliant. I don't know why I overlooked this photo when I first edited it, because I think it's actually a really cool one. Just because the highlights are there, it doesn't mean it can't be fixed, you know? The final image was another at Kenner Vale, and it's of a bench next to the stream. This is another one where the highlights are just simply annoying. It's a really, really bright sky and then a dark forested area. And this was almost the same process as the last photo editing. I brought the highlights down in the gradient from the top to the middle, and then from the bottom to the middle I upped the shadows. In this photo, while adding the warmth as well, because it's more of like a foresty photo rather than focusing on a building, I added a green tint as well to make it really foresty and naturey. And then I also did a vignette on this one as well. While the shadows on the other photo on the building were quite easy to get rid of, obviously this one's a sky and you can't just remove it. So it's kind of annoying because you've got this sort of like underexposed sky now, even though it's still white. Which is annoying, but that's what the whole point of showing you the editing process is that some things can be fixed and some things can't. But it's still worth trying. Those are the 6 photos that I edited this time. I've gotten a lot better at editing, it's become smoother, and I'm much better at talking about my editing process now because I know what I'm doing. Usually it's more formulaic now instead of just going through these random things and clicking random buttons. I can look at an image and think, right, I know exactly what I'm going to do. I'm reducing highlights, I'm lifting shadows, I'm doing this and that and this and that. It saves a lot of time, I'll tell you that. And that's about all I have to say, so thank you for watching. I really hope to get more videos out like this again. I'm really enjoying talking about photography more, so look out for those. If you want to see more photos like these, which will be upcoming soon, I have a lot to do with spring going on right now. You can check out my Instagram, which is at han_on_earth. It's in the description also. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe for more content like it, and also leave a comment if you have any comments and like the video. I will see you next week. Goodbye.